Welcome to the Commander Breakdown of Kathril, Aspect Warper. Hope you're excited to talk about some wonderful Abzan Reanimator. But before we jump into the video, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, TCG Player and Inked Gaming. If you want to buy anything from these companies, I've got some links down in the description below. It's going to help you out and help the channel out at the same time. But we've got some Reanimator stuff to talk about. So we have Kathril, Aspect Warper. We've got Abzan colors, 2 colorless. Whenever Kathril enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on it on any creature you control if a creature in your graveyard has flying. Repeat this process for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. Then, if that's not enough, put a +1 counter on Kathril for each counter put on a creature this way. I love this commander. This is a wonderful way to kind of use the mutate ability and not the actual mutate ability itself. It's completely wide open for whatever you want to do. In fact, let's go and jump into the leeway. Leeway is going to be the creativity of the deck. You know, how much room do you have for creativity? You have a ton of room for creativity. You know, you pretty much care about having creatures that have keywords on them. That's going to be a main sticking point. But there's a ton of different options that you can include into your deck to make it your own kind of special little recipe, whatever you want to call it. Now, as far as the support for Kathril, this is going to be a very high support deck. You're going to need a lot of keyword creatures. You're going to need a lot of graveyard abilities, you know, putting stuff into the graveyard, bringing stuff out of the graveyard. But it's good. You know, the fact that you have high creativity and a high support means that you're going to be a graveyard deck at its core, but you're not going to be strapped into just X cards need to be run in this deck. You're pretty much wide open as far as what you want to run, but it's going to be very high support. You definitely want to be able to get cards into the graveyard. It's going to be very important as a graveyard person to do that, very much so. And also with timing. This is definitely going to be more of a mid-range, late game commander. You know, if you just roll this out with nothing in the graveyard, you've got a nice 3/3. Cool, for 5 mana, that's not that good. You want to have your graveyard flowing. You want to have something like Life from the Loam. You get some dredge options. You get Delirium going. You just want to have some sort of value when it enters the battlefield. You don't have to wait until you have 400 different keywords in the graveyard, but you just want to get some sort of incremental value once it comes down. So this is definitely going to be more of your mid-range, late game, especially late game. If you've got a graveyard going, it's going to be pretty much hard to stop. But let's go and talk about some of the cards that you can run in here, and that's going to be keyword soup. There's a lot of cards out there that have more than one of these kind of keywords in there. We have Ronus, Destructible, and Death Touch. And with these, there's probably like 20 of these, so I'm just going to highlight them very quickly and just kind of go through them. Just know that when I read them, I'm just saying, hey, the main thing that you really should take away from these kind of next couple slides is what sort of packages you want to run in your deck. So you've got Ronus, Death Touch, Indestructible. Carnage Tyrant is going to give us Trample and Hexproof. You got Vigilance and Trample with Unnamed Kavu. Stone Coil Serpent's actually going to be pretty nice. You can cast it for 0, goes into the graveyard. It's going to give you Reach and Trample. And you got Vampire of the Dire Moon, Death Touch, and Lifelink. Like I mentioned, you don't need to run a ton of these in there. You don't want to have like 8 different copies of a 1-drop that's, you know, some version of Flying and Vigilance, whatever that may be. But, you know, pick and choose some, you know, 2 packages that really kind of help you out. White's going to allow you to be pretty aggressive. You've got Oketra that's going to be Double Strike and Indestructible. Even Sunstriker is going to be Flying and Double Strike. You got First Strike and Lifelink from Fiend Slayer. Also, we've got, you know, a couple different 1-drops. We have Angel that's going to be Flying and Vigilance, and then Healer's Hawk, which is going to be Flying and Lifelink. Depending on how you sequence your deck, you know, let's say that you're going to go wide, you're not necessarily going to make a Voltron deck, you know, running a lot of variations of these particular cards will really kind of help your board state. You know, let's say something happens, there's a board wipe, you can rebuild with that, or let's say you just draw into Healer's Hawk late game, it's Flying and Lifelink, then you're going to be able to put some extra stuff on it, increase the power and toughness, whatever that may be. You just want to have some sort of kind of core package of value keywords that you can kind of work with. Outside of the actual 2 keyword creatures, we've got some wonderful 3 keyword creatures. Archon, Ruminop Hydra, and Hound of Athreos. These are all going to give you some really good, you know, especially if it's just one of the only cards you hit in the graveyard. You've got Flying, Vigilance, and Trample. And that's going to be a wonderful Voltron creature right there. Vigilance, Reach, Trample, Vigilance, Menace, Lifelink. Just having, you know, let's say that you go Grizzly Salvage. You get 5 cards into the graveyard. Just hitting getting one of these cards in those top 5 cards off of Grizzly Salvage is really going to help you push your commander out and make a very nice threat for your opponent. Same thing with Aerial Responder, Vampire Nighthawk. We've got that Flying Vigilance lifelink, Flying Death Touch lifelink. Just pretty much running any combination of these creatures that have 3 abilities will really kind of get your graveyard going, and especially Danitha. Especially if you're running Voltron in here, Danitha is going to give you that reduced cost and still give you First Strike, Vigilance, and lifelink. Oh, my goodness. I love it. Sign me up. Now, outside of the keyword soup creatures, you can actually kind of run like this pseudo-tribal effect in here. You've got Angels, Akroma, Angel of Invention, Avacyn. You can say they all have either multiple keywords or they got really strong ones that once they come down, that's really going to help you push your game plan. Same thing with Sunblade Angel. We've got 4 keywords on there. Flying, First Strike, Vigilance, and lifelink. Sign me up. And especially if you're going Angel Tribal in this deck, which, you know, why not? You're playing Abzan Graveyard. Lyra Dawnbringer is going to give your other Angels +1/+1 and lifelink, which is very nice. And of course, Gisela and Bruna. Gisela is going to really work out as a 4-drop. If you want to run Bruna in there for the Bracella Voice of Nightmare package, why not? You know, it kind of fits in theme with the Abzan Graveyard Reanimator. Kind of see if I can't run it in there. It sounds kind of fun, but you know, especially if you're just running these you have the synergy at the base, which you have kind of this Angel Tribal, then you add all these different keywords to it. But yeah, just having all these different keywords on your Angels is really going to help you kind of push an aggressive game plan, at the same time also end up pushing Kathril. So, speaking of Angels, we got some demons that fit in there perfectly. Demon of Catastrophes, Mind Rack Demon, Doom Whisperer. The good thing about all 3 of these demons is that they're going to give you Flying and Trample, which is going to be very hard to stop. But at the same time, they're going to interact with the graveyard in some form or fashion. So we have Demon of Catastrophes. You have to sacrifice a creature. So you can sacrifice one of your early creatures if you don't have a discard outlet. We have Mind Rack Demon. It's going to enter the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. And then you also have that Delirium ability. Now, you do lose that life, but you know, at the end of the day, you're playing Commander. You start at 40 life, so you're going to have those options right there. And also with Doom Whisperer, his 13 hands are certainly going to help you dig for whatever sort of answer that you can find. And also, you know, just pay 2 life, surveil for 2. You're going to go straight into the graveyard, which is exactly where your commander wants it. So running some combination of Angels and Demons, you know, they're going to give you aggressive mid-range threats if you can't get your commander or your graveyard going. I mean, because Mind Rack Demon is only 4 mana. So just kind of keep that in mind, in that it is fun to try to get as many different creatures into the graveyard with keywords, but also at the same time, you know, let's say somebody shuts your graveyard off, Rest in Peace, which is, you still want to have some sort of mid-range threat, and these are going to be great options for you to kind of help close the game out. Now, outside of the keyword creatures that you want to run, you want to be able to get your graveyard going, get it kick-started. So you want to run some variation of this. We have Mire Triton, which does have Death Touch, which does help you out. Enters the battlefield, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Same thing with Glowspore Shaman and Satyr Wayfinder. These are going to enter the battlefield, dump some cards, and give you something back in return, which is pretty much what you need. Same thing with Nyx Weaver and Splinter Fright. These give you that slow and steady graveyard kind of dripping. If you've never built a graveyard deck, if you've never built a Dredge, Life in the Loam, you never played with those cards, one of the things that you're trying to do is kind of create this ecosystem. That's what Gary cares about. There's to complete the life and death cycle. So, if you heard that, that's Loretta. It's my production assistant. She's recording with me. But yeah, what Golgari wants to do is they want to complete that life-death cycle. So with Nyx Weaver and Splinter Fright, you're going to be able to dump those cards at the beginning of your turn and just kind of keep that nice, slow, and steady trickle of cards into the graveyard for options for you to go for. Outside of creatures dumping cards into the graveyard, you also want to run a lot of instant and sorceries that interact with the graveyard. So Winding Way, Grizzly Salvage, Ransack the Lab, these are all going to take place of stuff like Night's Whisper, Read the Bones, different things like that, because basically with you playing graveyard, it equates to, you know, reveal the top 4 cards of your library on Winding Way, put all of the cards chosen into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. It's basically just draw 4, dump them into the graveyard. That's one of the best things about playing a graveyard deck, is that your graveyard is just one big hand. And that really helps fuel it up. Even stuff like Mulch and Commune with the Gods, even though they're not running a lot of enchantments in here, it's still basically just draw 5 into the graveyard, which is pretty much what you want to happen. Same thing with Glacial Revelation, Crufix's Insight, and Scout the Borders. Being able to look at that many cards that quickly, looking at the top 6 cards or the top 5 cards of your library, dumping in there, it's really going to help you find your Life from the Loam. It's going to help you find different kind of dredge options to kind of keep that graveyard going. Life from the Loam is going to allow you to bring those lands back. Whatever it is, you just want to get that graveyard kickstarted, because once you get it kickstarted, you're going to be good to go. Same thing with Grave Strength. I love this card. It's one of my pet cards. I don't get to run it a lot, but it's really good in this deck. Choose target creature, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, then put a +1 counter on that creature for each creature card in your graveyard. If you've been paying attention during this video, you can see that we want to have a lot of creatures in the graveyard. So Grave Strength's another way that we can just kind of give our commander Grave Strength and just, I don't know, the flavor of it. Yes, sign me up. Now, like I did mention, you do want to run some dredge cards in here. You don't want to get too crazy, but you know, stuff like Dark Blast, Golgari Thug, Life from the Loam, these are going to help you build your graveyard, and at the same time just give you, keep you flexible in your game plan. There's a lot of creatures that are going to die to Dark Blast. You can just wipe an entire board of mana dorks, which feels really good. Golgari Thug is going to put some creatures on top. Let's say you can't really get a good graveyard going and you just need to get something like Doom Whisper to start swinging in. Golgari Thug is going to allow you to do that. And of course, Life from the Loam. Once you get your graveyard going with Life from the Loam, you're going to keep making your land drop turn after turn. So as you get to that mid game, that late game, I mean, there's just no better feeling than dredging Life from the Loam turn after turn and making those land drops and filling your graveyard at the same time. It is just so good. Now, outside of dredge, you might want to consider some sort of Delirium package. Gnarlwood Dryad, that's going to have that death touch. It's going to give you that bonus once you have Delirium active. It's not super crucial you run it, but you know, if you just want a keyword creature at the 1 drop that has a bonus for graveyard, that's your Dryad. Also, Grim Flayer, wonderful in this deck. You're going to be able to get to that full 4 very easily, and then it's just going to dump cards into the graveyard, which is pretty much where you want it. And then Traverse the Ulvenwald, you know, that's going to keep you open, and once you get Delirium active, that's going to allow you to find your heavy hitters, stuff like Zeltalpa, different things like that. It's going to go into your hand, so you need a discard outlet, but at least having an extra tutor that either allows you to go early game, just ramp a little bit, or late game, just kind of use it as a creature tutor, that's a pretty good option. Like I did mention, you have some sort of discard outlet. You know, if you have all the good creatures in your hand, it doesn't do you any good. So something like Lotlet Troll, Noose Constrictor, they have Trample and Reach. They also have the discard outlet with Lotlet Troll. You can also put some of those extra counters on there, and it has that regenerate ability, which is really going to allow you to do kind of double duty. You're going to be able to discard cards, kind of pump it up at the same time, and also be able to kind of keep it protected with regenerate, and it already has Trample, which is very nice. Same thing with Noose Constrictor, that's going to give you that reach. Not super crucial, but hey, you know, it's a discard outlet and it has a keyword on it. So outside of the Delirium, you also want to run the kind of protectors of the graveyard, Storev and Underrealm Lich. Like I mentioned, you're building this ecosystem with a graveyard deck. You want to make sure that you have this flow between cards and graveyard. Storev is going to be able to bring stuff back if you need it. Underrealm Lich is going to brainstorm cards into your graveyard, which if you've never played with Underrealm Lich in a graveyard deck, oh my god, it's so good. Definitely included in there, because even though they don't have keywords, well, Storev does have Trample, but even though Underrealm Lich doesn't have keywords, that ability, that brainstorm into the graveyard, that is some very good magic. Now, let's talk about putting cards directly into the graveyard, and that's going to be Buried Alive. Search your library for up to 3 creature cards, put them into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Questing Beast, Zeltalpa, Sylvan, these are all basically going to fill your graveyard up to where you get your commander down and you're good to go. You're going to have Vigilance, Death Touch, and Haste with Questing Beast, Flying, Double Strike, Vigilance, Trample, Indestructible, and then Hexproof with Sylvan. There's other options you can go for with Buried Alive, but if you want to get as many keywords into the graveyard as quickly as possible, Questing and Zeltalpa, they're really going to really help you get it done. But, you know, you don't always have to go for that, especially if you're trying to go wide with a bunch of creatures and put a bunch of different counters on creatures. Using Buried Alive for some other options might kind of help you out, but if you want to close the game out, here's your creature package. Outside of Buried Alive, you got Gerard's Order, which is going to be really good because that's going to dump a creature straight into the graveyard. Anyone goes to your hand. Entomb straight into the graveyard, and Deadbridge Trant. You know, you're going to dump the top 10 cards of your library, and you might get lucky bringing something like Zeltalpa back, Crater Hoof, whatever that may be. Very Golgari in that you're just dumping cards and just going for some nice random value. Now that we've talked about dumping cards into the graveyard, getting our graveyard full, let's talk about bringing stuff out for cheap. That's going to be Reanimate, Phyrexian Delver, Animate Dead. You may not want to go super heavy on reanimate stuff in here, but since we are a graveyard deck, you want to incorporate some sort of way to bring creatures out of the graveyard for cheap. We've got Unburial Rites and also Dread Return. Let's say we've got a bunch of our like mana dorks out there, or our keyword dorks if you want to call them that. Oh, I know. I'm excited. But with our keyword dorks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, sacrifice those. So it's going to put those keywords into the graveyard, bring back a big creature, Unburial Rites. You know, let's say we end up dredging Unburial Rites. We have that flashback for only 4. You just want to incorporate some variation of these spells. That way you can bring stuff out for cheap, which really does help. Also something, you know, as far as utility stuff, Life's Legacy, Momentous Fall, Greater Good. These are ways that you can sacrifice your creature, kind of keep that card draw going, and let's say that we sacrifice a really big creature, we have to discard those 3 cards with Greater Good. That's really going to help you stock your graveyard for those keywords that you're looking for your commander. So there's just a lot of times to where, you know, let's say you get something down and you're like, man, I really need this in the graveyard. Having some sort of way to sacrifice your creature and still get value is a very nice option. Same thing with Beast Tracker and Selfless Spirit. You're going to be investing heavily in your board state or in your Voltron commander. So something like Selfless Spirit, you definitely want to run because you can use it as board wipe protection and still give that creature flying. And then also Beast Tracker, really good. You know, search your library for a creature with Death Touch, Hexproof, Reach, Trample, and then put it on top. So let's say that we have Beast Tracker, we put something on top. We have Underrealm Lich out there. We can brainstorm that into the graveyard. Beast Tracker is pretty much going to allow you to be an extra tutor source and be a creature to put some extra counters on there. But outside of these kind of utility cards, if you're going to end up going Voltron, it wouldn't hurt to kind of toss in a couple different Swords of Blank and Blank. You know, whatever you've got. Sword of Fire and Ice is going to give you some good card advantage, deal some damage. Sword of Feast and Famine is just going to be, if you've got one, or if you're going to pick up one, get Sword of Feast and Famine. That is, protection from black and green is going to stop on a lot of spot removal on black, and then you get to untap your lands, and it's just like hitting the Mario Star. It's free real estate. Also, Sword of Sinew and Steel. That's going to allow you to kind of keep down some Planeswalkers or some artifacts. And of course, Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves, because our commander does not have the haste option on there, because that would just be absolutely crazy. So, but if you're going to be running Voltron, just running like a 5 Voltron package like this is going to be more than enough. Because let's say we have Healer's Hawk out there, flying and lifelink. We just get that down, toss on a Feast and Famine, and hey, you're good to go. So, you don't have to go super heavy on Voltron, because your graveyard's going to be your Voltron package. So, but it wouldn't hurt to run a few of these in there. Another thing that you do want to keep in mind in your deck building is incorporating some sort of flicker effect. Our commander cares about getting these different counters on creatures. So it's going to be Cloud Shift, Long Road Home, whatever that may be. Being able to bounce your creature, and especially if you're trying to go wide with a bunch of creatures, this is going to allow you to kind of spread out different counters, trample counters, flying counters on different creatures, and then kind of go from there. Now, of course, if you're running flicker effects, you've got Party City. That's going to be Conjurer's Closet and Panharmonicon. Oh yeah, sign me up. Just counters for everybody. Everybody's going to have fun. And to kind of wrap it up, one of the things that you want to do, like I've mentioned in the video, if you want to go wide, if you want to get a bunch of creatures out there, have a really nice commander, whatever that may be, running some sort of kind of stampede effect really going to help you close games out. Triumph of the Hordes fits on theme with our commander. Trample and Infect, Crater Hoof coming out of the graveyard with Unburial Rites, Overwhelming Stampede. And, you may have a bunch of creatures that flying, trample, Double Strike. Let's say we have a really big commander. Overwhelming Stampede's really going to allow us to close the game out. And then also, just different stuff like Concerted Effort, giving all of our creatures everything. Odric, Majestic Matriarch. These are going to allow you to just basically just spread out all your keywords across all your creatures and just be a huge pest for your opponent. And as far as utility goes, you want to run some sort of board wipe protection. We talked about Selfless Spirit, Fresh Meat. Create a token for each creature that went into your graveyard this turn. This is going to allow you to basically just refuel your entire board state and then start swinging in. But as far as the commander goes, that is going to wrap it up. Super excited to build this commander. There's so many different ways you can take this deck. Angel Tribal, Angel and Demon Flying, whatever that may be. The good thing about building a graveyard deck like this is that there's just so much overlapping value and synergy that you're just going to have a fun time playing it. Even if you don't end up with the world's biggest commander or this crazy board state, just having something actively to do each turn, whether it's dredging, dumping cards in the graveyard, trying to reanimate something, whatever that may be, it's just a fun deck to play. So if you haven't built a graveyard deck, I highly recommend it. And but yeah, that's going to be it for the video. With these videos, I do post these. If you have any suggestions, hop in the comments. People watch these videos in hopes of building this commander, so that way people can kind of scan it and see what's going on. But that's going to be it for the video. In fact, if you enjoyed it, like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.